All right, here we go. Let's pretend this is a new urban worm bag. You just put yours together, just like mine is right here. We've got these nice fancy frame right here that works really well. And one thing I will suggest is I have a tub, a mortar tub underneath. I suggest you do that the same. So let's go inside now and I'll show you how to get your urban worm bag going. Now remember, you should be doing this step for the inside part at least a week or two before you get your worms. So let's go inside the bag. All right, here we are at the bag and I'm going to unzip it and move it out to the side. Now, I know that mine is not 100% clean. I've been running this multiple times beforehand, and well, this is not a new system, but it is pretty cleaned out. I tried to clean as much as I could, and this is what it'll look like when you get it. There'll be nothing in here, obviously, no castings left over or cardboard, but it'll be perfectly clean. But this is what you're going to start with right here. So the first thing you're going to want to do, though, is build a false bottom. What I mean by this is you kind of want to make it where the worms are not falling into that little trap in the bottom right there. So I'm going to fill this up with some cardboard. And as I said, you should be doing this well before you get your worms. You should be doing this a week or two ahead of time. So right there, we got a nice little base of cardboard. And the reason why I'm doing this is so, as I said, the worms don't fall down into that trap area down there. Next thing I have, and this is a pretty thick piece of cardboard, but I have a piece of cardboard that kind of cut to kind of fit in there. And that, again, is just going to act as a slight barrier. You can, if you want to, you can round your corners. You can make it a little better. But I just want something that, when there's some weight on it, it's going to press down. It's going to kind of protect the worms from, again, falling into that bottom section where it'll really quickly kind of build up with water. And that's why I also recommend that tray underneath. Next, we're going to add a lot of cardboard here. Now, I'm using cardboard that has all gone through a shredder. You don't have to use shredded cardboard. You can use cardboard that you cut up with like scissors or a knife, or you could use paper, or you could use cocoa coir or something else if you want to. Those are all good options. I'm using paper because this is what's readily available for most people. And as you can see right here, I'm going to add a lot of paper to this. There's going to be a lot of paper. And the other thing we're going to need a lot of is water. Now, I do like using, so as you can see right here, we're really starting to spread this out. We want to make sure we make a nice deep bedding system in here. And I did mention water. I like using a sprayer a lot of times. But again, the reason why you put that bucket underneath or the tray underneath it is so that way any of this extra water that you leave, it'll be just drain right through into that tray. No big deal. And with that, let's see, that looks pretty good right now. I think that's a good start. Now I'm going to add, and this is just regular water. I didn't do anything with it at all. My normal fish tank water that I use a lot of the times. Just going to go pour some in. And really what you could do is you could throw that in there and then drain it in as well. You could just shovel all this into there, get it all wet, and then just push it back in. So there's lots of different ways to do this. Actually, I might be in the way of the camera there. I'm used to recording on the other side. So, but we want to make sure that this is nice and wet, this bedding on the top. So I'm just trying to keep as much of the moisture as possible. As I said, I normally use a sprayer. And actually, I'm already out of water in here. I'm not used to using plain water. I usually use fish tank water, but I'm not going to do that because most people here probably don't have fish tanks at home. And even if they do, they might not have the water or enough water to be able to run one of these systems. So I'm going to grab my sprayer a little bit and just spray a little bit more in here. So sorry for the noise. But you can see right here, just going to clean my hands off. Now, normally I also wear gloves when I'm doing stuff like this, but I know that this is clean. My hands aren't going to stick to it. This isn't that big of a deal. So I'm not wearing my gloves like I normally would. But once you have worms, you might want to wear gloves just to make sure you're not getting the stuff all over dug into your fingernails and everything. And also if you get any cuts or anything like that, you just don't want to get something that's going to hurt you. So I highly recommend getting gloves. So I'm just going to move this around a little bit, make sure everything gets nice and moist. As I said, I'm not used to recording on this side, so sorry if my head gets in the way there. All right, this is good. This looks like a good amount of moisture in there. Just make sure I get everything off my hands. Oops, a little bit more. There we go. That's good. Good amount of moisture. Just going to turn off my my sprayer there. All right. Now the next thing this is going to need is it's going to need some food. The worms need something that's going to be breaking down in this system so that way they can eat it. Now, You can take ground up food and put it in. I'd highly recommend for your first system, you grind up your food in a blender or in something. I don't recommend that you put it in directly. Now for me, I have a food cycler. And by the way, you don't want a lot of food for this first feeding. I have a food cycler. This pre-grinds up all my food for me. And that's actually probably more than enough food. Now normally when you're adding food, I'd recommend freezing it to get rid of any bugs and anything like that. Now this is dry food. So again, I'm going to turn on my sprayer. I'm going to water this down a little bit. Just kind of wet it in. And if your food is dry, like if you're putting a dry fibrous material in there, like carrots or something, you're going to wet it down as well to make sure that it has enough water. Because water is very important to worms and very important for the microbes. So I'm just kind of wetting this down. Now the other thing that you can add, and I will recommend it, I'm not going to add any because I have, the worms normally come with microbes in it. But what you would want to add is maybe just a sprinkle of soil or something that already has some microbes in it. This has some from the sides already, and I'm not as worried about it because I'm just used to doing this. But you might want to add just a little bit of dirt just to make sure there's some microbes in here, or maybe a rice wash or something like that, just so there's some microbes. As I said, a lot of times I use fish water when I'm doing my bins. Now, the next part to this is we need to add more bedding material. So this first setup takes a lot of cardboard. So I'm going to add more bedding material to get this going. So you want to cover all of this because you don't want that food on the surface, because if it's on the surface, one, it's going to smell, and two, it can attract bugs. So you're going to cover this up a little bit with some dry cardboard. Just spread it out a little bit. A little bit more in there. And this uses a lot of cardboard at the beginning. It really uses a lot of cardboard. I'm not going to lie. So you have to have a lot ready to go because these systems hold a lot. So there we go. There's that. And then again, we're going to kind of wet this down a little bit because this will soak up all the water we already put in there. So I'm going to go ahead and just get this top layer wet. And this is going to help keep everything contained, keep it going. And then with it being this low, the other thing you can do is you can actually throw a tarp over this or something that's going to hold the water down. In fact, I might just do that. But right now, let me just get this a little bit wet. Let me just see how it looks. See, it doesn't get down very deep when you're using the sprayer, so you got to make sure you move stuff around a little bit. But now that we have this together, we are ready to go in about a week when we add these worms. Now I'm adding some red wigglers and European Nightcrawlers in here. That is my plan. That is what my was voted on, I believe, when I took the votes to see what to add to this system next. And that's what we're going to do. So for next thing I am going to do, or I'd recommend, you can also, instead of having a piece of tarp, you could take a piece of cardboard and cut it and just put it on top. I don't have one to the size at the moment, but you can do that as well. And that's just going to hold down that moisture right above the bedding material so it stays moist. Otherwise, it's coming all the way up to the lid, and this is a good 6 inches maybe? 5 to 6 inches. So it's going to rise up and then hit the lid and then fall back in. But if you have something that's closer, it'll just keep it a little bit more damp. So, all right, we'll be back in just a little bit, and I'm going to show you when I add the worms. All right, we are back. It has been a week and a day or two, so this has had some time to kind of set up. So we're going to go ahead and open our urban worm bag up. And remember, as I said, you're supposed to do that before you order your worms. That way it has time to set. So I'm going to grab my glove here. And it looks a little dry on the surface, but we'll see how it looks underneath. There was water leaking out the bottom of this after I completed all this, so which is fine. But let's just take a look in here. There we've got some moisture down in here. As you can see, this paper is a little bit more brown, and it looks like we've got some food still in here that's breaking down. That's going to cause, well, here we go. Here's a chunk of it. So you can see right here, we got some mold on there, some of the bacteria that's going to grow, and that's really what we want. So there's a whole bunch of this in here that we're going to break apart here. This is going to dry out pretty quickly, so we're going to make sure that we add a lot of moisture back to this again. And again, it's okay if it leaks out the bottom, just put a tray under there. So with that, what we're going to do first, before we add the worms, we are going to go ahead and add some of our biochar to this. Actually, you know what? We're not adding biochar. I'm not going to add any of the biochar. We're just adding water because not everyone's going to have biochar to start. So we're just going to put in, I'm going to turn on my sprayer here. We're going to add some water to this. And it doesn't matter if you don't have a sprayer. You can add water any way you want. You can dump it in, which I've done in the past. But right now, this time, I'm just going to use the sprayer just because it's a little easier for me. Mix this up, get this all nice and wet. Just like this. You just want to kind of get everything moist again. It's okay that it dried out. If you added water while this was going, that's okay too. You could have added water to kind of keep it moist during the week that you were letting it sit. The idea is that we really want to get this biome going and get it ready for the worms. And it should be ready, pretty ready by now. Now, I do want to also say, when you get new worms, a lot of times, oh, let me turn this off. A lot of times they are not set up for a system like this. They were raised a lot of times in conditions that were with worm food or maybe manure. So they might not really acclimate very well. Mine were obviously raised in this type of system, and they're going to acclimate pretty quickly. Now, I've got this bubble wrap on top of here, and as you can see, actually here we got some really good castings on top of this. So they were really working away in here. I did add some more cardboard. I turned on the light so the worms all dove down. I did check on them before I actually brought this over just to make sure that they survived. But we'll just go ahead and dig down here a little bit, and you can see the worms crawling away almost immediately here. You can see all the worms in here. They look very healthy. There's a lot of mass in here as well with this, but you're going to get probably a lot less bedding than what I have right here. But you can see right here, we've got a lot of worms in this container. They're ready to move on. And there's also some more cardboard in here as well. But we're getting a lot of castings in there. This is going to help that microbiome out even more. The other thing you can also do, of course, is you can add in dirt to your system. Now, I added in the... there was already stuff in here from the last worm bin, so I didn't need to really do that. We're just going to go ahead and dump this in. If we can. Wow. Suck in here a little bit. And you can see there's just tons of worms in here. They're really congregating towards the water. That's okay. We're going to go ahead and scrape this out. Try to get all the worms out of here. Get them all in this system. And remember, this is a mixture of our red wigglers and our European Nightcrawlers. This is the first time I'm doing a mixed system like this. Normally, I have one type of worm in the system. I don't do two. And I'm doing that because that was what was requested. So, all right. Well, we got to make sure we get all the worms out. I can leave the castings behind, but I got to get all the worms out. I don't want to just have them die in here. That's not nice. So, I might take one more look through here just to make sure. Looks like I got all the worms out. Let's just make sure. Nothing surprising in here that's just hiding in one of these corners. It's amazing how they can get into little tiny spaces and hide. And I think we got them all, though. I think that's it. They were all primarily on this side right here. The other side was dry. So I'm just going to kind of scrape this out. I think that's good for the worms. So with that, you can see there's a lot of massive worms in here now. They're going to dig down into this system. We're not going to add food. This is one of the key mistakes that people make, is that they start adding food right away. More food. They try to get these worms really going, and they're like, oh, I'm going to feed them, and you end up overfeeding them at the start. So there's a lot of food in here. All of this cardboard that we have in here, this is all food. It's just they eat their bedding, but we just don't want to make it where this is so overwhelmed with food. It's going to heat up. It's going to kill the worms. The worms are going to not like the system. And especially, as I said, with new worms. When you have worms that are coming and you get them in a shipping box, it's a real problem if you had a lot of food, because they might not be acclimated yet. They just went through a very rough time being shipped with different temperature changes, and they're not going to acclimate very well if you've got a ton of food in here and they're not eating it, and then all of a sudden it starts to rot. So with that, we're going to add some more water. Yeah, rinse off my glove here too, but we just want to make sure, you know, all the bedding materials that's in there, when you get it, normally it's a lot drier than this. And that's because they try to dry ship them just in case there's temperature changes. They don't want them to freeze or overheat. So it's a lot safer to ship them dry. We're just going to get all of this nice and wet. Kind of get the edges again. Now with that, I am going to make one other suggestion. Now this is something that I happen to already have in my arsenal here. but that is some bubble wrap. And you just kind of put that across. This is going to keep at least the center section nice and moist. This is going to prevent the oxygen transfer in this area from getting all the way up to the roof up here where the humidity hits and then it falls back down, because there's a good 8 inches of space between where this is and the top of the system. This is going to kind of trap it down a little bit lower and kind of keep it a little bit more moist in this center section. I could put one here, and I could do it across the entire top. You can also use plastic bags. I've done all sorts of things to try to keep that moisture in. I really like the bubble wrap. I have had this bubble wrap probably for 20 years now, so I'm not like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go out and buy more. I've been using the same wrap for a long time, but that is how you start a system. So when you get your worms, you put them in, you make sure that everything's sort of settled. You're not going to want to add food for the first couple weeks. You're really just going to want to let them settle, and you're going to check to make sure the moisture level is okay, and you're going to check around the sides to see if they're crawling up to get out. That's what you want to do. And if you start seeing them escape, something is off in your system. Now, at that point, you can see if there's a smell. Maybe there's something else that's sort of wrong with it. But the key is to make sure that they stay in the system and are not trying to escape. Now, you could also have where, and I know this happened the first time, I got blue worms, and they were escaping all around the sides. So make sure also at that point that that's not happening. Now, I have a link down below for Memes Worms, who I recommend, and it is an affiliate link, but I do recommend them. I've ordered worms from her before. They were fantastic, and I think they're my European Nightcrawlers I think are from her, and they're the ones that are in this system as well. So with that, that's how you start that. I will have more videos coming up. In the meantime, if you're curious about other systems, I have some other videos you could check out, such as a 14-gallon tote or my busboy systems that I run as well. So with that, go ahead and check out that content and learn some more information so that way you can get your system up and running just like this is.